All right, Jaguar owners of the X350 series. I'm going to talk to you about a defective thermostat that I installed 2 years ago and only discovered that there was a problem recently. And I'm going to give you some background because I'm going to show you some experiments that I did on the thermostat to determine it was defective. So what I was experiencing is that the car would come up to temp while driving on a warm day. But if the temperature dropped down to 50 or 60 degrees, the temperature on the thermostat, on the gauge, would drop down to about 1/4 of the way up. It was halfway during warm weather and 1/4 on cool days. I then hooked up a scanner, which revealed that in fact it was running 180, 190 Fahrenheit. And then when the weather got cool, the thermostat would, the running temp would be down in the 160 range, which was wrong. But I didn't get a check engine light. So what I discovered is that the thermostat I installed a year ago, and this is the thermostat housing, and it goes right there. Sorry for the poor quality, but this mainly is an interest into the people who have Jags. It's easy enough to take off. You take off the air box, you slip this out, it's done. I also did take off the throttle body to clean it out and do some service. And I had to take the throttle body off in order to get the hose off of the radiator. But fairly easy to do, so don't be overwhelmed. Now realize when you tighten these screws back up on this housing, and there are 3 of them, be gentle. This is plastic on plastic with the screws, so don't be brutalizing them. So I had to replace the thermostat, and I'll show you some of the experiments later on in this video, which are kind of boring. You can either ignore it or not ignore it. It's your call. But I replaced this whole assembly because trying to get a thermostat into this assembly, I don't know how to do it. So I bought one off of eBay, the whole kit and caboodle, for about 65 bucks, which included this whole assembly here. And if you've ever worked on these, it's a complex assembly. And all I did was take the part that had the thermostat and this piece here, take it off the piece I purchased off of eBay, put it on, solve the problem. Thing comes up to about 180, 190 Fahrenheit. Runs steady. The weather around here has been cool, about 50 degrees. Rock steady. Get nice heat production out of the heater. Problem solved. So I guess what amazed me is that the new thermostat I put in, and this is only part of the thermostat, failed. And it seems so weird. But a friend of mine who is a professional mechanic, actually a couple of my friends who are professionals, they get defective parts all the time. In fact, one told me a story about getting an aftermarket window control unit for a Volkswagen. They had to do it 4 times before they finally got a control unit that was working. It was not original equipment. It was aftermarket. So in my case, it was a pretty easy repair. Previously, I'd already replaced the serpentine belt and the water pump, which is a little more complicated, but I got it done. And the only other advantages I did to clean the throttle body, check things out. So if you have problems with temperature and it fits that the thermostat is open, then you probably need to replace the thermostat. Even if you have done, in my case, replace the thermostat a year or 2 earlier, parts go bad. Now, I will show you in the videos where I'm boiling the thermostat, this seal here is supposed to sit down against this plastic edge. Well, in my case, this seal didn't seal. So that meant even when at room temp with the thermostat closed, and this is the closed position with the seal against this plastic rim, it was letting coolant go by to the radiator, which didn't help. It also didn't open, it did not close at 87 degrees centigrade. It was closing more like 79 degrees centigrade. So the loose fit of this seal against the housing, combined with the slow closure, ended up with a car that would run cool on cool days while driving. If it was at idle and there was no airflow coming through the radiator, it didn't matter if this thing was open or closed or not. It would run at a normal halfway in the temperature gauge. So this is more for people who are into these older Jags. I've got an XJ8 Van Dan Plus, and I guess this is a Jag. It's an X350, but this process applies to anything with thermostat. So you can install a new part, assume that it works, and guess what? It doesn't work. It's broken. That's not unusual. So don't doubt your diagnosis, but be methodical. So I hope you enjoyed the videos of me boiling thermostats and watching them open close. It really is for nerds. So I love you all. Enjoy the video. See you later. All right. We've taken off the cover, which is over here. It's got 4 little screws in it. We're going to take off this pipe and this assembly here, but remember this screw is located here. That screw is located there. We may ultimately end up cleaning the intake throttle body. And then we'll be taking off some of these hoses here because that's where the thermostat lives, is right there. All right. You notice these hoses here. These are part of, you see where the positions are? I just removed this plug out of here. I removed this plug out of the MAF sensor. I'm going to remove the throttle body, and it's going to be these 4 bolts. Then I'll remove this hose and the hose that's hidden underneath here, and we'll go from there. And I'm going to remove this big old hose there. Better get a slop container for the coolant. All right, I moved the bolts. Here are all 4 of them, and you can see where they come out of. They're actually a 5/16 head. They're not a 7mm, 8mm. They're 5/16. And then what you see is this gasket. And there's an elevated portion, which is hard to appreciate, and a completely, well, it looks relatively flat. Maybe it's just the passage of time. Yeah, maybe it's the same. A little hard to tell. I have one on order. And throttle body looks pretty clean. I cleaned it a couple of years ago. I'm removing it now so that I can get to the water distribution piping here, which I'll get to in a bit. And we'll go from there. All right, I'm testing a thermostat. This thermostat out of the Jag is supposed to open at 87 degrees, which it did. You can see there's an opening right there. And then I had a second thermostat unused, and you can see that it's open right there. So when it got up to 87, 88 degrees, it opened up, which is what it's supposed to do. Now, I'm going to cool it down and see if it closes that little opening. You can see right in there, hopefully you can, that is opening right there. So I assume when the water is getting heated, that since this goes to the radiator, this fluid just stops there. That's what I'm guessing. Waits to heat up the thermostat, which then opens up there and then closes and shuts depending upon the temperature of the coolant. Well, the problem I'm having with my car is that it's starting to warm up to operating temp, which is 87, 88 degrees centigrade. But when I'm driving, the temperature drops down to the 160s. So I'm trying to determine if the thermostat is defective. And that's what I'm doing right now. We're now at 86.8. So I'm going to assume that that little opening there is going to close if the thermostat is in fact operating correctly. Now, this is not science. Look, I've got a meat thermometer inside the water, and it's 86.4 degrees centigrade. And I assume when it hits, I don't know, 80 on the thermometer, that this valve here will close. The next thing I'll do is I'll let it cool down, and I'll make sure that there's no water passing through the closed valve here, which is allowing it to cool when the car is running and there's air going past the radiator. At least that's the hope. We'll see what happens. So once it cools down, I will fill up this area around the thermostat and see if water is allowed to pass. We're now at 85. I don't see it really closing. Oh, it looks like this one has closed. Yes, it has closed. So is there a possibility that this one is staying stuck open? It certainly appears to be that way. This is still open right there. Whereas this one, the motor rad has closed. And the motor rad is designed for a Jaguar. And it opened at 87 degrees centigrade, approximately. And it is closed. Whereas the one for the Jag has not closed. And we're now at 83. So we'll see when it closes. I can see it very well. My apologies to everybody who can't see it very well. It's pretty hard to photograph. I guess I should have stuck a light in there, but I don't have any lights that'll survive 100 degrees centigrade, at least not that I know of. So it's still open. I can still see that it's open. It looks like it's slowly closing. Yes, it's slowly closing. So I have a replacement thermostat, and I will test it. But obviously the motor rad is already closed. But the one out of the Jag looks like it's still stuck open. And we're now at 82. So we'll see what happens. Just had to stop a phone call. I can't record and have a phone call at the same time. But if I had to say, I would say that the thermostat seal, which is right here, is slowly closing, although not dramatically. And we'll turn this back on. We're on centigrade. We're at 81. Yeah, I can still see it's slightly open. Because I'm trying to figure out, why is my car running cold? Now, 160 Fahrenheit is not cold. 150 is, but you can see the gauge on the dash drop down to about 1/4 of the way. And it's slowly closing. Maybe if I shine the light through here. It's a little late for that try, but yes, it appears to be slowly closing. So it's 81 degrees, 80. So I'll have to get no, I can still see that it's open. You can't, but I can see just a glint of gold. But it is definitely less glint than I had before. We're not at 80, not 87. So I will have to take the other thermostat housing with the thermostat. The motor is clearly closed. It's been closed since whenever. So this one is not functioning as well, but it is slowly closing. I'll have to see what 80 degrees Fahrenheit is. Yes, looks like it's closed. So is that the range of operation, or is it supposed to be more precise? Is it supposed to be like the motor rad, where just a degree below 87, it closes off? I'm sorry I can't get a light in there. But next experiment will be coming up. I'll be back. All right, this is a continuation of the experiment. 73 degrees inside the tunnel. And here is my motor rad, which opened up at 87 degrees. We're now at 75 degrees centigrade. And I'm looking at the Jag thermostat, which it's hard to tell, but it says, this is a replacement, it says 87 degrees centigrade on it. We're gonna focus on it. Go look at the motor rad. It says it's 76 degrees. So this may take a while, but it's part of science. 77, so we're 10 degrees away from what it says on the thermostat lip of 87 degrees centigrade. And we'll try to see when it opens. The motor rad hasn't done anything. Just humming along, doing its thing. We're now at 79. No activity on the motor rad. No activity on the Jaguar replacement. I'm going to turn off my headlamp. Oh, that doesn't make it better. That makes it worse. I'll bring in this light a little closer. See if that helps. Now, let's see. Okay, that looks pretty good on the Jag. This is the Jag thermostat. We're at 82 degrees. A little hard to tell when it's that foggy, but it says 82.1. Motor rad hasn't done anything. It hasn't opened up. I haven't seen any opening up on the Jag thermostat. I don't see anything. Let's see if I put my headlamp on, if it gives me any more. And maybe a little bit more. Nothing on the motor rad. We're on 84 degrees. No activity on the Jag one. No activity on the motor rad. All right. We're getting close to that point. 85. It's supposed to open at 87. Trying to see if there's any activity. Nothing yet. 86.7. Motor rad hasn't done anything. The Jag one hasn't done anything that I can tell. The motor rad, let's see if it's going to start moving. We're at 87.9. Oh, the motor rad is starting to open up. And we'll see if the Jag one starts to open up. A little hard to tell. I don't see anything. I'm sure it is, but is there any movement? Motor rad is definitely opening up. We're looking at the Jag one. Motor rad is open. We're at 91. We'll see if the one for the Jag is opened up. I don't see anything. Doesn't mean it hasn't opened up. It means I just don't see it. Oh, I start to see it starting to open up. It's 94. Yeah, you can see just a little bit of silver rim starting to show up on the replacement one. And the motor rad looks pretty much wide open. That may be as far as we get, but I can see a little more silver edge. I'll try putting it out with the thermostat. You can see it right in this area. Ooh, that's hot. Right there. Yep, it's definitely opening up. It's 95. Yeah, it's still opening up. If I had a pan big enough, I'd have the other one in here too. But I'm doing another test on it. So it is clearly opened up at 96 degrees. And I'm going to turn this off. The motor rad is open. Yes, we are open on the replacement thermostat. Let's see, I have to turn this back on. There we are in centigrade. It's 97. Yes, that thermostat is now clearly open. And let's see what it says water temp here. '97, 97.4. I'll stick it in the center. So we're back. I don't know if I turned it off. 96. The Jag thermostat is clearly open. The motor rad is, oh, that's wide open now. That's very easy to see. Yeah. So just watch as it cools down. It's slowly going down. We'll see when the motor rad shuts what temp. And the Jag thermostat, maybe I'm hallucinating. Looks like it's closing just ever so slightly, but it should be. It's 95. Yeah. So we'll just continue to watch. Kind of use the motor rad as the gold standard, even though it's a little gold. Yeah. And it looks like the Jag filter. Maybe I'm hallucinating, but it looks like it's closed just a little bit. And it's 94. Oh yeah. I'm saying it's starting to look like it's closing just a little bit, but I may be hallucinating. Wouldn't be the first time I've hallucinated. The motor rad is still open at 93. 87 is supposed to be its opening temp according to the label on this thermostat. 87 degrees centigrade. And it still likes it. It's open, so that means it's flowing. We're at 93. Sorry this is such a long, arduous test, but that's just the way it is. Yes, I think the thermostat there is actually closing. Yes, it is. I can see that this is slowly closing. So we're 91. It is closing, without a doubt. It's closing. You'll have to take my word for it. The motor rad is still open at 91.4. I don't think it's closed at all. But the Jag one is definitely closing, which appears to be different than the Jag one I had before, which stayed open till like 70 or 80. Yeah, I'm sure. I'll have to look at the video. Oh yeah, it's closing. And it is 90 degrees. Now, this would be preferable to the other one because the issue I was having in the car is that in cold weather, when I was driving around, it would heat up at idle. And when I started moving, it would cool down. You could see it on the gauge, and it probably cooled down to like 170 degrees Fahrenheit. I had my scanner running. Yeah, that one's definitely closing down on the Jag one. And it's 89. And that's really the way I want it. I don't want it to remain open when it's 80 degrees because that's just an oscillation in temperature I just don't want. And let's see what the motor rad is doing. Looks still pretty open. It might have closed a little bit. A little hard to tell without measuring instruments, The Jag one looks closed. At least I don't see any evidence that it's flowing. And the Motorrad appears to be closing. It's 88.4. So the Motorrad appears to be behaving. Yeah, that space on the opening is definitely closing. So that's what I want to see, is when it hits 87, ideally it should be closed. The Jag one is closed. I don't see any gap there. I'll try to point it out. I don't see any gap here. Hopefully you can see where I'm pointing. Sorry for my big hands in the way, but that's where it's closed. I'll stick the measuring device back in the thermostat. So we're at 85.9 and the moto is definitely closing. Yeah, definitely closing. We're at 86.4, which, given the lack of precision on this test lab testing, that's probably close to 87. And the moto is definitely closing. So at 85.8 or 86, the moto is definitely shutting down. It's doing it within appears a couple of degrees of 87. And the one over here on the replacement Jag thermostat, it's definitely closing. Yeah, looks like the moto's getting pretty close to being closed. It's 85.2. Yeah, looking pretty good. So that may be the explanation why the car in cold weather with the other thermostat is suffering from swings in its temperature. Now, as I may have explained previously, I can't tell the difference between these thermostats when I play with them. Squeeze them, can't tell any difference. They're not stuck open. And we are now at 84. The Motorrad has been closed for quite a while, and that's closed. Okay, so we have some evidence. Let's see where the other thermostat is. I'm doing an experiment here because what I noticed on this one, and this is the one out of the Jag, there appeared to be a leak. Let me see if I can get a pointer. There appeared to be a small leak here, or I'm pointing with the fork, in the seal area between the thermostat seal and the housing. And I thought, okay, so I filled up this entire area with water. And I set it, as you can see, it's sitting now, and it's slowly leaking out, meaning the water's appearing at the bottom of this tube. It's a little hard to see. Oh yeah, there's water in there. So there is already a partial leak, even at room temperature, which is gonna be 21, 22 degrees centigrade, or in the 70s for those of us who do Fahrenheit. So this one has, the thermostat that's been in the car for 2 years appears to have a small leak around the gasket, even at room temp, so it's always flowing. That may be a design issue, I don't know, I haven't tested the other one. And then we look at, we're at 81. The Motorrad is definitely closed. And I don't know if this one has a seal issue, but that'll be for a video for later. See you in a bit.